If you had to honor an entrepreneurial ecosystem of the year for 2025, who would it be and what would go into the criteria? We're going to talk about that today on Builders Live. Hey, I'm Chris Wink. I'm the co-founder, CEO, and publisher of Technically, the news organization with a community of technologists and entrepreneurs. It is December 17th, 2025. I am wearing a Brian Brackeen-inspired Christmas sweater. We are wrapping the year that was of 2025 through the lens of entrepreneurial ecosystem building and workforce change and the like. As always, I'm joined by my co-hosts of Builders Live, Brian Brackeen, managing partner at Lightship Capital, Victor Hwang, the founder and CEO of Right to Start, and Rae'Mah Henderson over at Techstars. Rae'Mah, Victor, Brian, thanks for being here.
Good to see you.
Glad to be here.
New intro music, Chris.
Was it new?
I
think it wasn't supposed to be new. Then I wonder if I did the wrong one. That might be a problem.
It was very vibey.
All right. Wow. I think I must have done something wrong. It's not supposed to have been a new one. But sure. Okay. We'll go with a special edition of this wrap is what we're going to go with. All right. So here's what I want to do, Brian, Victor, and Rae'Mah. Like, I want to touch on why 2025 was distinct. And then I want to get some of your counsel on how we would think about what entrepreneurial ecosystems had the best, the biggest year of 2025, but like a couple little points that I, from where I sit, saw as highlights of the year. So one, hey, I mean, we really got going this year. 2025 was really our real full year here of Builders Live. So thanks for being part of it, friends. But a few points that stand out. One, we are still 5 years into our entrepreneurship boom. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. We'll talk a bit about that maybe, but we're still at high water marks above pre-pandemic eras. August and probably September, though there's some delayed data, were once again some of the biggest rates of entrepreneurship we've seen in a generation. We had a federal administration change, which just shifted lots, including immigration policy, once a real bedrock of innovation, which we can talk a little bit about. And whether you like it or not, the AI infrastructure does matter. The data center build out, which is part of AI infrastructure, is probably by one count the third biggest per share of GDP infrastructure investment in American history, alongside a big railroad build and the peak year 1959 of highway system being built out. Telecom comes pretty close. And then the last bit that I didn't get to pull together the bigger chart I wanted, but industrial policy from Biden to Trump, investments via EDA tech hubs, NSF engines, recompete, even what used to be called Build Back Better. 150 or so regions around this country have some version of federal funding that have gone into place-based economic development, usually with ecosystem language, meaning piecing together practitioners, entrepreneurs, workforce strategists, academics, and the like. This is a massive change from where we were a decade or so ago. That's where I'm sitting at 2025. Before I push forward, I guess, what am I missing? Or like Brian, Victor, Rae'Mah, like the year that was of 2025, is this a synopsis of that? What's the time capsule of the year to start? And Victor, you've been traveling much. I think I'm going to go to you.
A synopsis of the year. Wow, that was that wasn't in the homework assignment.
Well, I like to challenge you. You're too good. I'm going to be easy stuff. When you're this good, Victor, you're going to get challenged.
Got to be ready. Got to be ready for the zingers. I think it's the U.S. is clearly at a moment of trying to figure out like how do we do this thing again? Like what is this economy? And you see that play out, in so many different ways, nationally, politically, and then the same forces happen at the local and state level as well, which is the sense of what actually drives American prosperity, and then how do we keep it going? And you see that debate, whether it's cutting costs from lots of programs, or it's putting up tariff walls, or it's there's sort of an endless list of things, but they're all kind of getting at this question very badly, and not in a very thoughtful way about what drives American prosperity and how do we keep it going. And I think this is a year of re-examination with lots of experiments that I don't think are necessarily all the best experiments in the world, and you're seeing the data come out now, because they're not actually going to the heart of it, which is what all of us are part of the choir, which is entrepreneurship and innovation are the big drivers of it. But if you look at what's been done, they're not really related to that, right? It's tariff walls, it's immigration policy, it's sort of, it's sort of random cost cutting. That's not innovation or entrepreneurship, right? And so I think it shows that our answer is still not in the public sphere. So I'd say that's the year. The year is this big soul searching in America.
I think that's right on. Brian, Rae'Mah, before we push to thoughts on how we pick or think about vibrancy of ecosystem building, any other 2025 windows that we should remember in years past of this year?
I've got one. Well, it's a realization more than anything, which is this silos of ecosystems and silos of economies is starting to be a real problem, where you have very specific sectors doing great and a sector right next to it doing poorly, right? You can have two people, next door neighbors, one struggling, one having the best year of their life, right? It's starting to be we talk about ecosystems a lot here, right? But there's starting to be a decoupling, right, of ecosystem and kind of community success, which I think is worrisome.
All right, Rae'Mah, I'm gonna let you off the hook unless you have something on that.
I actually don't have one.
Yeah,
I was just going to comment on. I need to see Brian in a Christmas sweater more often. It's great.
This is for the people, you know what I mean? Just a little something.
We gotta keep it fresh. Okay, all right. So that's there was a massive federal administration change. There was massive industrial policy that has been continued with some volatility between one presidential administration to the next. Ecosystem building, place-based economic development with entrepreneurship at the front has remained centered in Republican and Democratic states. As a watcher, I view that as a very nervous and creaky, but a continuation of this being an important priority. Data center build out, infrastructure build out, entrepreneurship up. We're doing it differently, but there's similarities. That's the milieu we're operating in. And so here's what I wanna go to. I think we technically can be helpful and well positioned to call out some of the best ecosystem building of the year. So we'll be putting together a piece here at year end, calling out kind of ecosystems of the year, not in kind of like overwrought award show style, but just in like highlighting great behavior, mix of governance and policymaking, priority of community building, mixing things together, some real successes. And I would want to call out smaller regions, mid-sized regions, and bigger regions to call out lessons. So before I get full counsel on you guys on places to look, and I have some thoughts myself, I wonder what should go into that sort of criteria if we were to be looking at ecosystem of the year. What should be in consideration?
I'd say for sure citywide collaboration. I think that shows something serious. And I think also placemaking. And I don't know if people always talk about placemaking, but I think also the ecosystem building of making a place where people want to build and want to live is something I definitely kind of put high on the totem pole.
I like that. Victor, Brian.
Yeah, I'm going to steal part of Rae'Mah's answer. Like every ecosystem I go to that's operating well, people are pulling for each other, like every single time. They can tell each other stories. It always feels good when you're in those places versus, again, those silos. I wanted to also add kind of what it's not. It's not about who got the most venture capital in the year. It's so much more than that. It's more about like starts in general. It's just as much about the mom and pop as it is about the AI startup that raised $500 million pre-product, right? Because who those folks hire, what they do in communities are all different. You actually need both, right? I mean, you do want the $500 million startup, but you also want a good pizza shop too.
Well, and that gets at like the at its core, and Victor, you can certainly speak to this, but the ecosystem metaphor that's used in a lot of places, but particularly in place-based economic development, that it it translates to lots of different sized ecosystem building. At an earlier episode of Builders Live, actually, Victor, I remember you putting it to me like it's the level of connectivity, not necessarily the amount of people. And so what I always think about is big urban centers just have more chances to do that. There's just more people in a place. You can be done badly one place, but done well elsewhere. In a smaller place, you just might have fewer bets, right? You might only get a few swings at doing it well. And so I always think a good actor in a small place can have so much positive impact, and a bad actor can have so much negative impact in a smaller place. And that kind of changes a little bit. But it's always fundamentally about how do we take ideas, bring them to the market? How do we create value for the most people locally, generate dynamism for others to benefit? That's ultimately what we're talking about. And so that's a little bit what's in my head here. So Victor, what's in your criteria for ecosystem of the year?
One thing just to add on to what Brian was saying about you want both the $500 million startup and the pizza shop. I just saw some research that came out like a month ago or so, which said that they're correlated. Like when there's more venture startups, there's more pizza shops. Like people think they're separate, but if you think about it from like the level of the ordinary person, it makes a ton of sense, because it's like, do you feel like your community encourages you to go pursue something as a, to go chase a dream? And that's kind of a universal layer across a community, right? It's kind of in the air. And so I thought that was pretty interesting research that came out, that people think they're separate, but they actually correlate in how they, how they respond. My thought is, I agree. You want a community that collaborates, but I'd also say it's kind of like a top-down collaboration as well, which is very rare to do, which is you want the bottom up to meet the top down. That what the community is doing, what's coming up from beneath, which is the grassroots, the authentic energy, meets the leaders who understand it and appreciate it and nurture its growth. And that's hard. That's hard because those usually operate very much in different silos. And you see that play out at the national political level, which is a lot of the stuff coming down, and nationally, what they think entrepreneurs want or need doesn't always match up with what they actually want or need. And so that's just a constant theme of this work, and a great challenge of this work.
I mean, we technically do an annual all team day, and so last week we had our team in one place, including the newsroom, and I went back to what our onboarding is, especially for folks in our newsroom, and just because it was top of my mind. I mean, you said that, Victor. I wanted to when someone technically starts, they get a bunch of onboarding stuff. But one of the things they get is, why does technically matter? And we put it in 3 ways. We teach, talk to our team about why entrepreneurship is the center. We talk about the net new jobs, obviously the MIT paper that Victor, you and I've been talking about for 10 plus years, but net new jobs come from new companies. That market creation, meaning the way we bring a solution to the market, is via entrepreneurship. So presumably we want to solve stuff, and this is how we do it. We do talk about the wealth creation thing, though I frankly always downplay that. But theoretically, yes, you get some wealth creation for owners and some employees sometimes. But what you just hit on, Victor, is also that dynamism that in the research talked about, like, new stuff just seems to beget other new stuff. And we don't even fully totally understand it, other than we just know that intuitively, right? Like, oh, dang, that bitch did that. I can do it better than that. And you that is healthy in some form. And so that's why we talk about entrepreneurship. We talk about workforce, and we talk about information provision in our work. But I just wanted to share that, Victor, because it's very top of my mind that I think a lot of people, or it's easy for us to forget because we've sat with this research for so long and we've seen it redoubled. It's easy to forget that people don't always grasp how this is not a side quest. This kind of is where so much of what we're talking about starts. And it seems to me that one reason places don't always do it well is because they don't realize it's the start. And so I think I still talk sometimes to economic development folks and policymakers and people in journalism who still kind of view this entrepreneurship stuff as like a cute little thing happening on the side, as opposed to the start of things. And so I hear you saying,
we're the ball game. Yeah, we're the ball game, and they think we're just like some like side dish.
Exactly
right. Yeah,
exactly.
That's the issue. No, I just saw some article come out, I guess, a couple days ago in one of the big Wall Street Journal, New York Times, about it's a small town in West Virginia, which had been relying on federal grants and subsidies, and they're wondering where all the jobs were, and they didn't even talk about like entrepreneurs, the lack thereof, and it's like, how do they miss this? It's like, where else would the jobs come from if it's not entrepreneurs? And why are they not thinking about this? And why does the article not address it? That's what got me. Was it's just constantly, all the time, they just miss it. It's right in front of them.
Truly, which is why I think, and to push us kind of forward here around how we define this, like I have been pushed before about we at Technically do cover city, state, federal investments in pro entrepreneurship programming or policies or methods to take sciences or other ideas and bring them to market. Usually the push is like, if we ever cover that, we're over covering it. And my stance has been, we've always felt, obviously this happens at the person level. On this very podcast, we've talked that we know at the end of the day, often like every entrepreneurial ecosystem, probably everywhere, started with a dozen people at a coffee shop or a bar or a conference room or wherever. Like that's probably the origin of everything, whether it's documented or not. Typically where it starts. A handful of entrepreneurs meet, and then later they start matching, and like then a little spark happens, and it becomes more valuable, and people rinse and repeat. So I think when I think about great ecosystems, especially of 2025, when I'm thinking, I got some notes that I want to push us forward into. But when I was thinking about how would Technically call out like great ecosystems, I think you guys hit on a few things that stood out to me. One, that there has to be someone somewhere who's taking it seriously. And I know that sounds like a low barrier, but I think often, as we're saying, I am still stunned how this is just like viewed as like just another little thing happening in a place. And so like, if there's anyone who's talking it seriously, and that happens, I think, Victor, you called out in an earlier episode this year, National Governors Association, I believe, put entrepreneurship at center. So we do see this happening in meaningful ways, which is why the industrial policy has been interesting to me, not just because money matters, but because $1.5 billion in federal commerce dollars, which is small by federal budget standards, but goes to 36 regions to do commercialized science and entrepreneurship. That matters. So some of my criteria was top level leadership, taking seriously entrepreneurship, and an ecosystem approach. That it's not just the institutions, which you do want the institutions, but you need to leave some space for the people meeting as people. Talked about some big headline wins. Like, it does help to have something that happened. Yeah, a little bit of ribbon cutting, or just like that company's success shows that investments here are paying off. So a mix of headlines, a mix of top line leadership, and I wrote out some places that stood out to me, but I wonder if you guys could start. Brian, Rae'Mah, Victor, are there places that are like, if pressed, you would say, I think they had a pretty good year, and I think we should say it's for the year, right? Like, doesn't mean you're gonna have a bad year next year, friends. So it doesn't let you off the hook. You got to keep working. But are there places who you think of have had a pretty good year?
It'd be like what's the curse of the Time Person of the Year? Like their year, they always like, that's always the peak of their.
On the cover of Madden, exactly. If you're on the cover of Madden, you're injured the next year. Yes, exactly. This is the Madden or the Time.
We're about to condemn an ecosystem.
Yeah.
So bad.
Yeah. Who had a good year this year?
I've got
Rae'Mah? Oh, Brian. Yeah, Brian.
No, Rae'Mah, please.
Rae'Mah, who give me someone who had a good year.
Okay, this isn't my ecosystem of the year, but or is this? Well, I guess maybe I could say it. I'm going to say Chattanooga for my person that
Tennessee. Shout outs.
Shout out, and I've actually spent a lot of time there these past couple months, and I'm starting to like it. If I am to consider moving, it's not that far away, but they have really worked really well in like placemaking. It feels like a place to build. They've got, I feel like a city is doing something good in innovation when they have cool people. It's very strange to say, but the placemaking, but alongside that, just how collaborative they are in their ecosystem. So I'm gonna shout them out.
I'm gonna shout out some coverage technically he's had on Chattanooga that is. Give me a lesson or something from Chattanooga that you think other ecosystem builders around the country of any size could think about.
They actually had a program. I can't name it off the top of my head right now, but I just got to speak with one of the founders that went through it. They had an accelerator model that wasn't actually an accelerator. They didn't give any money, but it was just like, here's a place to work, and we're going to just surround you with resources. And there was no time limit on it. So those builders stayed around for like 2 to 3 years, built those companies. One of them was Chattanooga Whiskey, and they're still doing really well. And I thought, how interesting, like maybe just supported funds. It's not no expectation of like finishing a program. There was no programming. And many of those companies have gone on to have either acquisitions or exits. So I thought that was an interesting model.
And collab, shout out to the homie Tazia. Shout outs. I'm talking to you next week. So Chattanooga, we do love, and yeah, under Launch Tennessee statewide strategy. But yeah, all right, we'll come back to that. All right, so Chattanooga,
love Chattanooga,
love that city at under 200,000, so like mid-sized to even
phenomenal
even on the smaller side.
Phenomenal
and great internet. That is part of their thing.
Well, no, it actually is. They were one of the very first cities to because it was actually part of the I think the Tennessee Valley Authority had some power to create their own. The utility companies, now I remember right, had the ability to actually build internet on the old utility lines. And so they actually had faster, better, cheaper internet than anywhere else, earlier than everybody else out there.
And quantum is trying to push in for that reason. Quantum computing demands that. So, all right, Victor, anyone, you don't have to say but just are there ecosystems that you felt had good years, 2025?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. And to that point around top down meets bottom up, one of the communities that had a really, I think, phenomenal year, this is at a state level, I would say, is Indiana. Indiana they've been building so much from the bottom up. And this year they hosted the Global Entrepreneurship Congress, the first time it'd come back to the US in almost,
good flag.
Almost feel like 15 years, which was a big deal. And they pulled that out. They pulled that off, and the community came out and rose up to the occasion and really met them where they were. And then on top of that, Right to Start was able to help get a Right to Start Act passed there to create an Office of Entrepreneurship. And the Governor Braun is an entrepreneur himself. He was elected. He came into office at the beginning of the year, and he's made entrepreneurship one of his very top priorities. And he came out of a small town in southern Indiana, and just to have an entrepreneur who's built it from the bottom up himself and in a position of authority now to really lift and elevate this issue and to have hosted the big global Congress, it's just a breakout year for the state.
Can Brian, I want to little diversion here, because actually is something that we're very much talking about it technically. And I think the industrial policy is, whether you like it or not, part of the reason here. State versus region. And not in an adversarial way. I mean, very tactically in this sense. And Victor, I am going to ask you, because this is where I'll take genuine advice from you. We this week technically very happily launched what we're expanding to Louisiana in 2026. Very proud of that. And it is a statewide expansion. We'll be covering the state of Louisiana. And a hotly debated topic inside the Technically newsroom is how we think of how many ecosystems are there. And we're having that in the same place. We report in Virginia and Maryland and Pennsylvania in some sense. We all know, if we're being real, if we're not being polite to whoever wants us to say what they want us to say, just like the way humans experience a place, it's normally at largest or regional level, sometimes even narrower. But I in my experience with humans, it is city or region, county, something like that is just the human enough scale. And state, you can have cool t-shirts and cool branding, and you can have an identity, but I don't know if I believe that's an ecosystem in my mind. That strikes me as with the way we mean it, I think it starts breaking down. But I've been yelled at, I've been hollered at. So we are talking about thinking of, we might cover states, but look at ecosystems at more regional level. And I welcome push on that because I'm not sure. And so if we talk about ecosystems of the year, my notes, funny enough, Victor, I have states that had great years, but I did ecosystems at the regional level. So how someone please push this.
That's a fun one. And like I remember just a few weeks ago I had to talk with someone in Alabama explaining to me the different layers of the ecosystems within Alabama and how they can't stand each other, right? Yeah.
Huntsville, Mobile, and Birmingham are different ecosystems.
Northern and South. Northern and South are like different worlds, which I thought was really funny. It's interesting. Oh, Indiana. I think it's because the biggest city, Indianapolis, is dead in the center of the state. It's a bit more cohesive than the typical state.
That's exactly right.
Right. Northern Indiana is a little bit different, like Gary, South Bend. That's a different. There's like a strip up there that feels a bit different, but even they are not too far away from Indianapolis. They're all within like a date. They could do day trips out there and meetings out there, so it's not as bad as a lot of other states. But you're right, though. I mean, Louisiana, you're talking lots of competing ecosystems. From the southeast to the southwest to the northwest to the northeast. They're all probably central. They're all different, and they all probably are like universes unto themselves. So it's very, there's no one answer to all of it. I think a lot of it's history and geography. Like I remember in the Middle East one time, and I was visiting some folks, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, on the weekend sometimes I go visit my grandma because the food they eat there is different and their language is different. It's a whole different culture over there." And I said, "Oh wow, how far away is that?" They go, "Oh, it's like 20 minutes." And I thought, "Oh wow, that's like a what is what is an ecosystem? What's a community? What's a culture when 20 minutes is a different language and a different food and all that?" It's like so every place is different.
Yeah, I was gonna just triple down on that. I think after hearing Victor's answer, I think I have a formula for you, Chris, to think about how you want to do it. It has a lot to do with, is the main entrepreneurial ecosystem in the state in the center of a certain shape or not? So, for instance, in Ohio, I actually think very strongly that there's an Ohio culture and that people are like, OHIO, like they're really like, we're Ohioans are Ohioans. Like we start there and then we kind of work our way down. And in a way that as a Pennsylvanian, we are not that way in Pennsylvania. Like it's Pittsburgh, they're like Midwesterners, right? And there's Philly, we're East Coast, and there's a mountain range in between us, and they're just completely different kind of cultures. Ohio, there's no plane service between the city. Like we drive it's nothing to just drive, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, 4 hours somewhere. And I think because Columbus has the most entrepreneurial activity, I think, and it's the dead center, it means that everyone's kind of close and no one's too far. I think Indiana's the same way. I think places like Providence, Rhode Island, smaller state, but is clearly everyone's on the same page, place like that. But conversely, if Trenton or Princeton were the center of the entrepreneurship scene, maybe that would be true for New Jersey, but it's not. It's very barbell. It's very north and south. So I think where that center is and how your state is shaped, I'll go to Missouri versus Oklahoma, right? That plays a huge role.
That's so good.
Yeah, go ahead, Rae'Mah.
I would say Brian is so smart, but
and he got such great sweaters. He really does have
they go together. They go together.
Christmas swag and the smartness. I actually do want to throw in an honorable mention too, because when I was researching the topic for today, I asked my homegirl ChatGPT what ecosystem she would say is killing it right now. And I didn't want to admit it here when we were like having our pre-discussion, but she said Columbus, Ohio.
Wow.
And as her honorable mention, which was really cool, she said Birmingham, Alabama. And I was like, there is a God. There is a God. And she also mentioned Chattanooga. So it's very interesting also. I don't know if that's necessarily just on media and achievements and how I base it off, but I thought that was cool.
And ChatGPT doesn't know who you are at all when you're talking to it.
Oh, and she mentioned she has to know because I'm in Chattanooga every weekend. She was like, oh my God, let me give her what she wants. I'm going to say Chattanooga and Birmingham.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Rae'Mah, I have so many feelings about what you just like really beautifully represented. Because like, yeah, where the source information is, I have lots of data on where the source is coming from on those things. So, but that's right. I'm going to give a little more time for us to like talk specifics, Brian, Victor too, because Rae'Mah, thank you for giving specifics. But to linger a sec, one shout out to Jonathan put this in the chat, but like one tactical way that this is showing up for us, and we technically are like, we think we're gonna kind of have to help develop an opinion on like how this works. Like we think it is the kind of thing that's just going to need it. We're about to. This is why it's becoming a internal debate. We are updating. Last year we piloted an innovation ecosystems map, and it was places that we had some data on, and they were mostly like existing larger hubs. And the update's going to now have all states will have some data and some representation and some content. So all 50 states and Puerto Rico has some content that we're reporting out, and it will be able to be like a place to go get a little bit of context on every place. And we are going to have at least one, what we're going to call ecosystem in every state. Some states will have more than one, but within our ability to go deep. So like we just don't have the capacity to do, all 17 different ecosystems that Alabama would like to claim, because there's only so much we can do. But that's what's happening for us is like we use data, and at some point you just have to draw consistent lines. I can't use Indiana and Columbus, Ohio. I can't do a state and a region. It's just impossible. I have to get some apples to apples stuff. We do some per capita, but journalistically and to approach this from any kind of objective way, I need kind of some apples to apples. So we are moving at technically to think of we'll have statewide strategies. The NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center report that I've mentioned. I'm relying a lot on Heartland Forward's research that went into that report, and their counsel was like, so much policy that impacts entrepreneurship happens at the state level. So that's why statewide strategies matter a ton, but that it's different than how people connect. If you look at like connection maps through social platforms, it's highly concentrated around regions. It just is how most people experience the world, is through kind of a region. So I'm right now playing with, we got state strategies, but it's ecosystems at regional level. Colorado's got great t-shirts with great Colorado flag on them, and Montana's got great vibes, but there still is like Bozeman and Missoula is distinct, and what's happening in Denver, Boulder distinct in the frontier. So that's what I'm seeing, that it's like ecosystems a little more regional, and the state can have multiple ecosystems. So the way I'm going to approach this kind of ecosystem of the year is states can have great years, but what's happening in town? And here I'll get very personal. I think Pittsburgh's had a great year. I think Philadelphia's not had as good a year. So like the state of Pennsylvania has had some vibrancy. I think there's a bunch of stuff that's gone really well for Pittsburgh. I would put Pittsburgh in that like having a great year. I wouldn't necessarily put Philadelphia, even though there's some great stuff happening there. Let me just rattle through, and then let me get you guys in my final 10 minutes. I'll get to you guys with these. So here's some ones that I wrote down when I was playing through this. And I try to push myself to think big, medium, small, to try to like make sure I was looking at different places. I do think, and Victor, you might have opinions on this, I think Austin had a good year. I think some of the housing declines are good. I think there's a good story around housing and affordability in Austin, along with some headwinds. But there can be disagreements. Arizona and Phoenix, I'm mixed on, because like I think the Phoenix story right now that got a lot of national attention was a lot of federal funding toward chips, and that was one of the big winners of chips. I'm a little torn there about whether I really see, and Danielle can yell at me, but whether there is real ecosystem level building, meeting the grassroots and the kind of state strategy. But I'll get yelled at about that. Those are kind of some of the big regions that I was thinking about. And I also thought some of the Chicago quantum stuff is interesting, but I'm a quantum skeptic, so I put them as like got some prominent. But those are my big, had good years. My mediums, I did think that like no doubt Ohio probably shows up somewhere here around medium-sized regions having good years. Columbus performed really well in the Heartland Forward research that just came out last last month in acceleration for entrepreneurship. The industrial policy of Ohio is among the handful of states that has most aggressively gone toward industrial policy making. I think there's some risk to there, but no doubt I put them there. I put Charlotte had a good year. The Raj Shetty economic mobility research came out just at the end of last year, so it really came into 2025 with a narrative that Charlotte had progressed in boosting economic mobility, and entrepreneurship was part of that. So North Carolina has good bipartisan stuff happening. And Portland, Oregon, I put as another medium that did well. They have some semiconductor stuff. And then my last kind of small on the smaller side, I'm gonna get yelled at, but like how I was breaking up New York State. I think there's good stuff happening in New York State, partly because of the tech hub, semiconductor investments, though they fight with each other all the time. So shout out to you guys in New York. You guys hate each other in a way that I think is more dark than even other places that I know. So maybe be nicer to each other is my counsel to.
And that part of that set up the way the state does it. They actually have the regions compete against each other for a zero-sum pool of dollars.
Interesting.
So it's a bit of a Hunger Games model of economic development, and
I love that.
You get the way you set it up. I mean, you get how it's designed, and
Our
that's
neighbors.
Yeah, right. So say, all right. So let's shut me up. That's kind of. I have a couple more, but that was basically how I was beginning to framework this out. Victor, Brian, who else? Like Rae'Mah, like what other places we should be thinking about as ecosystem of the year? I'll go report this out. I'll pull some stuff together.
By metric standpoints, mine it doesn't necessarily match the list, but I'm just finally glad to see some momentum. I've had family in Flint, Michigan since the 70s, and I actually got the time to spend some time up there this summer. And they just launched their first innovation fund and have announced their first recipient. So I'm like, oh, hallelujah. So I'm going to put that in there. Not by major standards, but some momentum.
Yeah. Well, and I think like for me, I think the narrative is probably meant to be progress. So I think, a bad year can lead to a great year if you make real progress. I think there is a narrative around, are you taking entrepreneurship-led place-based economic development seriously is what I'm thinking this quantifies as. Victor, Brian, my final minutes with you guys. Are there other places or ideas I should be thinking about that represent the year that was 2025?
I did a lot of thinking about this because you always pose the hard questions.
Big J journalism. I take you guys seriously.
Listen,
it's a tough class.
Yeah, come on.
That Pulitzer is on the way. I think there was a lot of stories and a lot of narrative around Miami during COVID. So people feel like they heard the story, read the story, know what was going on, and then less so after. There's supposed to be some flight of people back out of kind of Florida, that never happened. And a lot of the fundamentals just continued straight up, but because the story, right, had been told in the previous years, it goes almost now back under the radar. And the reason I wanted to highlight it is Miami is had both a very, very good year and is at the highest risk of having a bad year coming up next. And it's really because.
And you said Miami, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, Miami. Yeah. It's because Miami, people don't realize, has a high percentage of high skilled talent that immigrates to Miami. Like San Jose number 1, Miami number 2 in high skilled immigrant talent. And so as immigration is more and more and more of a lightning rod, and less and less and less high skilled, immigrants, coming to this country, it's those cities at the top of that list that have the greatest risk of their ecosystems kind of slowing down.
I do. We did it. We did a show on immigration. I do think we are a polite bunch that focus on our local issues, but I do think it is impossible to talk about entrepreneurship, innovation, and not recognize the incredibly important role that immigrants play in our communities. And it is like it cannot be understated. Other stuff, topics that should go into this thinking on ecosystem of the year, as it were.
Well, you mentioned Austin. I was just there last week. The National Governors Association hosted a small event, and a few thoughts. One is, Austin is my hometown, and I've kind of seen that place transform over the last 4 decades, and it's sort of unrecognizable to me now. Like, people are going out to regions of town I didn't even know existed now for entertainment, and there's so much happening all across the city. And so the price decline has been precipitous. I think it's the highest real estate price decline in America, something like 20% declines over the past year. It's like phenomenal drops. And so that's, my parents' houses are part of that drop.
Right.
But it certainly has, it's probably a necessary reset, because I've heard of and met plenty of people who just came to Austin because they bought the buzz during COVID, and they realized, oh, it's a place with good and bad, and it's got hot weather in the summer, and there's all sorts of reasons to love it and not to love it, just like any other place. And so I think the reality of Austin is set in, and it's good. It's a recalibration. It's the way the market works, and it'll find its balance over time. But the one thing I'll just sort of note from the National Governors Association, because as you'd mentioned, every year they have a different chairperson, and the chair this year is Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma, and he has decided his initiative is called Reigniting the American Dream, and the number one issue at the very top of that for him is entrepreneurship. And that is a sea change, to actually have the National Governors Association make entrepreneurship at the very top of its agenda. And so that's what's really exciting. And I spent a lot of time with him and with others there, and they're going to make this a big deal, and they're going to put entrepreneurship at the very front. And so we're starting to work with them on this America the Entrepreneurial campaign for America's 250th next year, which we're going to work with you as well, Chris, on, and Brian and Rae'Mah would love to work with you all. We've launched the America the Entrepreneurial Playbook, which has got over 30 things for people to do to take part in the campaign for America's 250, and it's free. Anyone can join and participate and host your own activities, programs, events, take your own actions. You can use our logo and brand and celebrate with us. So, so I think that's probably that's my it's the way celebrities pimp their new albums out on their talk shows. pimping the new album out on this talk show.
I love you for getting the album art out. I should have done like
an album.
We got Victor.
Yeah, the young ones are like, "What's this?" It's like, oh, it's an LP. It's an acrylic.
Victor, just say you got Jeezy on track 7. That's all you have to say.
Got it. Absolutely.
I would love to hear him say that.
All right. So here's what's going to happen now that we're at time. This has been the year that was the 2025 of entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystems. This is going to inform a piece that we technically are going to have on ecosystems of the year. I think we're keeping it going into 2026 with our Fabulous Builders Live podcast. We'll get the date up next. We'll be in 2026, the semi-quincentennial alongside America the Entrepreneurial. I think we should get Governor Stitt on the pod, actually, Victor. I feel like maybe we should start some guest appearances. And we're working through this, but I'm going to try to lure Victor's already coming, but I'm trying to lure Brian and Rae'Mah to our Builders Conference in May. We're going to do, I say we kick off the thing with kind of like a live podcast recording for the May edition. So we'll see you live in May in Philadelphia for the semi-quincentennial.
I will be there because you're going to get me my cheesesteak or pizza at Angelo's.
Well, we'll see. Oh, yeah, Brian and I have a
I wasn't offered a Philly cheesesteak.
Well, to be clear, Rae'Mah, we're not sure it's going to play out. Brian and I have a bet on there be fewer or more software developers in, I guess, maybe it'll be April data. I actually have to figure out when the data release will be, but will there be fewer or more in April or whatever, 2026 than there were a year earlier? So
we'd love you to come to, the embarrassment for Chris will be even higher if we're all there,
Okay.
kind of
witness the eating.
A communal effort.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Well, it just got a Michelin star, a Michelin guidance, so I might get myself. Now it's really going to be a line now.
Wow, we got to be there for that.
Yeah. All right. This has been the year that was 2025 in innovation ecosystem building. The first kind of full year of us doing this ecosystem building, entrepreneurial ecosystem focused podcast recording. Victor, Brian, Rae'Mah, it's been a great joy.
Real pleasure. Real honor,
Yeah,
guys.
same.
Absolutely.
We'll see you in the new year, friends. See ya.
Happy-
Bye.